Hello everyone and welcome back to the Little Quilter. Today we're going to be starting a new project. Super excited to do it. This is a new one in that it is not from my stack of last year's quilts which I still have a stack of quilts that I need to work on, but this is a completely new one. I bought this pattern after I went to a family member's house and thought I finally know what colors I want to make a quilt for them, because that's something whenever you're making a quilt you want to think about, is it going to go with their style, their design, all of those things. And I finally had sort of a color pattern to go with, and the quilt that I found is this quilt called the NorthWest Quilt, and you can kind of see part of the design here. So this quilt is by Heck Yes So Company, and I purchased it on Etsy. It's a really fun quilt design here, so you can go online. I just ordered the PDF pattern, downloaded it so that I'll have it here. Obviously you can print that as well if you wanted to, but all of the fabric guidelines, everything are going to be on here if you're interested in going to that, and of course I will link it down below so that you guys can check it out. Now, on this one, because I loved this design and loved the colors as well, but whenever I originally was looking at them, I thought they were very more blue, and so I purchased them, and this is actually the colors that they are. So you do have this kind of blue, almost in the light, it's a little bit more like a dark gray. And then this beautiful color here, which is a really pretty green color. I don't know if it shows up as well as I'd like it to on the screen, but for me, love this color combination. But her house is not necessarily green, so it was more of a blue color. So I thought, well, maybe I can find some blues. So I purchased these, and again, I feel like the camera is making it look a little bit better, and maybe that's why it looked so much better on my computer. But I picked out this blue for the lighter color, and it is a very pretty blue. This is all from Art Gallery Fabrics. And then I picked out this color, and on camera, and especially next to this one, I feel like it does have a little bit more blue to it, but in real life, I feel like it is a lot more, there's almost like a dark turquoise color to it, and I just feel like it really pops next to this. You can see there's that little bit of green to it that I'm just not certain about, because I was trying to get away from green. I was trying to do like a darker slate blue. So I thought, well, what about combining them? And although I do kind of like the idea of doing the other quilt for myself and doing this dark gray slate with this blue, and I think that's what I'm going to do. There's a slight concern for me that this is going to be a really big pop of blue compared to this. Like, I feel like there's a big pop, so I've been going back and forth, but this is a lot, I feel like a more neutral tone than this one. There's definitely a little bit more of a pop, but I think they all go pretty well together, so I think I've decided on this one. I think this is too dark. Definitely too dark. That's like so washed out. I think I'm gonna go with this. It's a really hard question. Gosh, they're just so pretty, aren't they? I just love looking at fabrics, and I wish I had gotten swatches, but you know what? There comes a point where you just have to quit buying swatches and buy the fabric, and also they're always adding swatches, so I don't really have any fabric swatches. Do you guys do fabric swatches? Do you purchase like the whole kit? I like the thread ones because the thread ones are quite useful for before you buy a whole big thing of thread, which obviously, yes, it would be helpful if you didn't buy a whole big thing of fabric, but I don't know. I just don't, then you're committing to only buying the solids from that fabric line, and you're not going to buy from Code of Cotton. You're only going to buy Art Gallery or vice versa, or whichever one. So I have a hard time with that. I could have, of course, gone to a store, but I just get impatient and I want to purchase it when I do it. So yeah, I think I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to do this. I may end up buying more of this fabric, the slate fabric, so that I can do the actual pattern depending on how this comes out, because this combination, I mean, there's a reason she did this. It's gorgeous. So we're not going to do this gorgeous design. We're going to do this gorgeous design, and it's going to go great. So now I've got to iron all of this and cut all my pieces. Let's get it done. So here is my first layer of cuttings of what I'm going to be sewing, and you can see I have this really light blue, then we have the same cream background, and then this is the darker color here, and they're all laid out. There's a whole bunch of strips that are cut there, and then I have this depressingly large and unorganized stack over here of fabric to work with. So I have got all of that cut up, all of the pieces cut up, and of course that was a lot of work. Do you guys cut all of your fabric first and then start piecing it, or do you kind of cut your pieces as you go? I have, since the Elizabeth Hartman quilts, I really have switched to cutting all of my fabric at once, but I am really not a fan of that. I feel like having things broken up into sections is a lot better for me, and that's part of the reason why I love the block of the month quilts, because you just have a small amount to cut and then you can jump right into quilting, versus when you do a large quilt, which I do often like to do the largest quilt, and in this one I'll be doing the bed quilt. It's about 102 inches by 102, or what it's supposed to be finished at that size, and it's just a lot of fabric to iron and cut, and it took me multiple days. And then of course the next step becomes, where do you sit it all if you don't have a lot of room? It'd be nice if I had a whole like table that I could put it on. I can't put it on the back of the long arm because sometimes that's where I am ironing, but also when you're moving the long arm back and forth, you certainly don't want to be scattering your pieces across the back of it. That would be terrible. So sometimes I have stored things on the back of the long arm, but not typically, and certainly not in a large area where I can kind of spread it out like I probably need for this one. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into finally starting on this. I feel like I've been working towards actually getting to do some sewing now for like a week and a half. So I hope that you guys are going to enjoy this process. We'll see how far we get in this first section, because I'm not sure how this is going to get broken up throughout the quilting, and it may just be something where as I piece this quilt I'm giving updates or showing parts of it. I'm not quite sure, because this is a little bit different than what I have typically put together, and that it's not, an Elizabeth Hartman quilt with a little part here. It's more of a pattern quilt, which is very different, but I love the look of this, so I am excited to do it. So let's jump into this. So I did want to quickly mention before I jump into it that I have been using these to mark the fabric. Now I didn't use it on all of it, so let me find a small piece. So on the darker ones I actually used a little chalk pen. So this was the Fons Importer chalk pen. It's a really nice little chalk pen here, but I just used it to mark on one part of the fabric the numbers so that I could keep up with all of the different pieces. Now, obviously on darker fabric like this, and especially solid dark fabric, this works great. But for the lighter ones, what I have been using are these. And I do find that because these are a little bit glossy, you need either a ballpoint pen or a Sharpie pen to mark on them. Otherwise, they have a tendency to smear, and you certainly don't want to be touching this, putting it on your fabric, having it smear, and then maybe touching your fabric with your finger smear, if that's a word. So I do recommend these. I think they're very, very helpful, and they really help to keep things organized after you've cut all of your fabric. But make sure you use a ballpoint pen. And I just got these on Amazon. I got them actually like years ago for bullet journaling, but I haven't used them for my bullet journaling in a while, and this has worked out really well for me for quilting. So always nice to use what you have. Some of you may have the bigger ones, I think, that you use for yard sales. So if you're not planning on having a yard sale, maybe that would be a good reason to use those stickers lying around. Okay, everybody, I have finally finished all of these, and for being strips of fabric, it took me quite a while. Obviously not anything difficult about doing this, but they're just so long. Now, I have one bit of anxiety, is that all of these were supposed to be cut like super long and basically longer than my cutting mat that I had. So I kind of did a little bit of finagling in that if they were folded in half and I cut them, how much did I have to cut off, all of this stuff. And I think some of them I left a little bit long, but all of them have some level of different amount for the most part. And so I have a bit of anxiety that I'm going to end up short. And I hope not. I really do hope not, because I think the next step is going to be cutting these up and subcutting all of these. Also, I feel very nautical with this. I felt like I was making some sort of nautical flag. But I do think the colors are matching really well. I was also worried when I first picked out those colors that this blue was just going to be too bright, too much of a punch compared to the really beautiful deep-toned green that paired with this. And I think it's actually working really well, but it also looks incredibly nautical to me. So it's pretty interesting. But anyways, so what I'm going to do next is going to be subcutting these down. And then basically it's kind of like one of those disappearing 9 square blocks. I think that's how you say that. And that you start turning them in different directions and sewing them together to make this really cool looking block, which is super awesome. And so I'm going to go ahead and subcut these, and then we'll see where we're at. Okay, I just finished my first cut, and whoa, look how close I was. Oh, there we go. That's how close I was to not having enough. So close that it just completely came undone. But I cut all of my pieces for the first one done. Now I've just got to do the rest of them. Okay, so I still have all of these to cut into the individual square blocks, but I've done a few of them, and I'm a lot nervous actually, because, well, as you guys know, I am not a spot-on quilter. So I have never really achieved a perfect quilting and piecing. And so whenever I sewed these, there definitely was a recommendation to measure out these to adjust, your widths as you went. And maybe honest, I really didn't do that. I don't have a ton of time whenever I'm sewing, so I don't feel like I just have all the time in the world to just sit here and let's do a lot of fussy cutting and a lot of fussy sewing, and so I'm just not that type of piecer and that type of quilter. And so I just sewed them, obviously doing my very best to stay on that 1/4 inch line and to make it nice, not to stretch the fabric on the biased edge. I did go opposite directions when sewing these, right? So whenever I pieced these two, you might go this way, and the next time you go this way, right? That is to help with sort of that bowing that can happen, and I felt like overall that that's pretty good, but my piece is not exactly on point with what it's supposed to be measuring, which is pretty much true to form. And honestly, I usually don't get too stressed about it, but I am a little bit stressed with this one because we're taking this and sectioning it and doing more with it. And so I did the next step, which was to complete this block here, which it doesn't look too bad. And it is only off, let me find my little quarter block. It is only off a little bit on the square. So let's see if we line up. That is spot on this side. So if we go over here, okay, well, it's making it look like it's perfect, but I know that it's not perfect. Okay, there we go. Maybe this is better. Okay, so you can see it's spot on here, not moving. You can see that little bit coming off there. And, I just don't know how much that's going to matter with this quilt. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking to have already put in this much effort and already know that I'm going to have to, to just know that it's still a little bit off. And I don't think it looks bad though, so I'm cautiously optimistic about it, but this could be a big giant fail. And of course, what that would teach me would be that if I'm going to do a quilt like this, I'm going to have to do the fussy cutting spot on. So we'll see how it turns out. For now, I'm going to leave you guys with this block right here, which I don't think looks terrible for all of the potential biased edges, for all of that. They're lined up for the most part. I think this bottom piece right here is a smidgen off, but for the most part, not too shabby. And then these are the other pieces. I'm not quite sure what the next step with these, but these were the other parts in this little square that I cut up to see what the next part is with this. So I'm going to keep working on this and I will keep you guys updated. So as a reminder, this is the NorthWest Quilt pattern and it is by Heck Yes Sew Company. And I'm really excited and really nervous at the same time to be working on this, but I am always excited to start a new quilting project and a new quilt. And of course, this one has a home that it's going to go to. So let's really cross our fingers that I don't have just a giant disaster. Also because I'd really kind of like to do it in the original colors, maybe for myself at some point. So if you guys have enjoyed this video, don't forget to give a like, thumbs up, all the YouTubey things. And of course, we'll see you next time. If you're interested in this quilt pattern, I definitely have it listed down below. So check it out. She has a lot of beautiful quilt patterns out there. And they're just gorgeous and very, very well detailed on here. So definitely check out Heck Yes Sew Company, and we'll see you next time on The Little Quilter. Thanks.